There are no more barriers to cross. All I have in common with the uncontrollable and the insane, the vicious and the evil, all the mayhem I have caused and my utter indifference toward it, I have now surpassed. My pain is constant and sharp, and I do not hope for a better world for anyone. In fact, I want my pain to be inflicted on others. I want no one to escape. But even after admitting this, there is no catharsis. My punishment continues to elude me, and I gain no deeper knowledge of myself. No new knowledge can be extracted from my telling. This confession has meant nothing.
Most of you have probably seen this movie already, but I'll give you a quick recap. American Psycho follows Patrick Bateman, a wealthy New York investment banker. Bateman is unsure about his identity. He wants desperately to fit in with the other yuppies, but also wants to be an intelligent, free-thinking individual. Eventually, his internal conflict becomes so troubling that he finds catharsis by murdering people. At its core, American Psycho is a movie about psychosis, but it only touches on the symptoms and never really gets into what actually causes Patrick Bateman to descend into madness. In this video, I want to focus on the causes of his psychosis. To do that, I'm going to break down the ending monologue and analyze the deeper reasons behind his descent into madness.
There are no more barriers to cross. All I have in common with the uncontrollable and the insane, the vicious and the evil, all the mayhem I have caused and my utter indifference toward it, I have now surpassed.
Throughout the film, Bateman struggles with his identity and constantly feels that he is not a real person. This feeling comes from living in a world of Wall Street fakeness, where appearances matter more than reality. In the book especially, there's an over-the-top focus on brand names. It usually goes something like, I'm wearing a suit by brand X with a shirt by brand Y, etc, etc. If you think about it, brand names are just representations of the actual clothing. Their fakeness becomes even more apparent when you realize that a lot of clothes from different brands are made in the same factory. For Patrick, the world isn't made up of tangible objects. He doesn't see the actual material things, he sees the brand names, the abstract symbols they represent. This sense of fakeness eventually turns inwards, to the point where he starts seeing himself as just another abstraction.
There is an idea of a Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me, only an entity.
The crime Patrick commits in the movie are his way of trying to find some sense of identity and humanity in this fake Wall Street world. Funnily enough, this feeling of reality can only happen if he gets caught. It's only then that his sense of self, through his actions, would finally be acknowledged. But when Bateman confesses to his lawyer that he killed Paul Allen and about 20 to 40 other people, the lawyer doesn't believe him. He doesn't believe him because apparently he just had dinner with Paul Allen recently. To make things even more confusing, his lawyer calls him by a different name, Davis.
I'm not Davis, I'm Patrick Bateman.
Which only adds to his sense of being unreal and disconnected from the world. This leaves the audience wondering if the murders ever really happened, but more importantly, it casts doubt on Patrick Bateman's entire identity. Not only did he feel nothing from the murders, but there's a lingering question of whether the murders were even real. And by extension, if Patrick Bateman himself is real, his sense of humanity comes under immense pressure, pushed to the very edge of what can still be considered human. At this point, he feels like he's gone beyond just being vicious or evil. He's reached a state of inhumanity, or maybe even non-existence. And it's precisely this pressure that causes his sharp and constant pain.
My pain is constant and sharp, and I do not hope for a better world for anyone. In fact, I want my pain to be inflicted on others. I want no one to escape. But even after admitting this, there is no catharsis.
Carl Jung, a Swiss psychologist, described a concept called the persona. The persona is a social mask we present to the world. It's the role or identity we adopt to fit in and interact with society. It's made up of societal expectations and the parts of the true self that are useful or well-liked.
There are a lot more important problems than Sri Lanka to worry about.
Like what?
Well, we have to end apartheid for one, and slow down the nuclear arms race, stop terrorism, and world hunger.
Here we see Bateman's persona as a morally upright citizen who wants to do good in the world. But as we know, that's nothing like his true self. In a way, the film might be representing Patrick Bateman as his persona and David as his true self underneath. Jung describes a phenomenon called enantiodromia, which is basically turning into your opposite. It's an opposing force within the unconscious that balances the persona. And it happens more often than you think. It's like when someone super religious suddenly says, "Screw everything," and starts living like a hedonist rock star. Similarly, with Bateman, his persona as a morally upright citizen gives way to a second life as a violent, murderous psychopath. Jung also explained enantiodromia as being torn apart into a pair of opposites. This manifests as something real within the psyche, which can lead to serious mental problems. It's this conflict that explains the constant and sharp pain Bateman experiences. Even the reason he doesn't hope for a better world for anyone else comes from this opposing force. His mask is that of a kind, altruistic person. So naturally, the opposing force manifests as a self that wants to inflict pain on others. And he does this through his murders and his dark wishes.
My punishment continues to elude me, and I gain no deeper knowledge of myself. No new knowledge can be extracted from my telling. This confession has meant nothing.
As I mentioned earlier, Patrick Bateman committed these crimes as a way to feel real, by gaining some kind of recognition. If others acknowledged his actions, he might have gained a deeper understanding of his real self. This part of the monologue supports that idea even more, because he's clearly distressed that his punishment continues to elude him. Since the lawyer denies these acts, everything feels fake and meaningless again, maybe even more so than before. So this confession means nothing, and he has no new knowledge of himself.